So, what is the main ingredient to write a good hero character? I think at the end of the day, you really must make this character one that is respected, likable by the fans, and one that, as much as they may have their weaknesses, their strengths almost always, for the most part, will compensate and make this particular hero look like at some point they're not permeable by any of the forces of evil that they're fighting against. This is not to say that evil is not, or the bad thing or the bad guy is not going to affect them, but you really want this character to be strong. A lot of times I've noticed that in today's day and age, it seems like there's some kind of attraction to weaken the superhero character. Let's go ahead and look at this, because this is not too much of a complicated thing, especially when you stand on the shoulders of some of the best writers that we have had in different genres, writing hero or superhero characters, be they comic or be they other contemporary works. Now, many of you know I'm working on my own video game. I'm writing the story of a new superhero, and I'm bringing a video game along with this particular hero character. My biggest, in my opinion anyway, strength is that we have a plethora of works written by great writers that I can always lean on to be able to get what I think is the secret sauce of this entire thing. But I've noticed that most of the times, a lot of writers in today's day and age don't necessarily want to follow that pattern. And even those writers themselves, they have been in positions where they actually made what I think are grave errors. We're going to examine one of my favorite characters out there, which is Sherlock Holmes. One of the really interesting things I like about characters is I like detectives. Mostly you're going to see me basically, in some way consuming content that centers around a detective character. If I list some of my characters, you're probably going to be, laughing in terms of what I watch from movies or TV shows. Batman is my favorite superhero character. One of the reasons because he's a great detective and probably, according to the cartoons, the greatest detective ever, followed by Sherlock Holmes. My biggest regret is not reading the Sherlock Holmes books before I watched the movies and the TV show. And then from even the Eastern side, Detective D, a judge who's also portrayed as a wonderful detective on TV. He also has a very unique and interesting story that is also being told these days. So these are some of my favorite characters. And when you actually take a look at these characters, they have their weaknesses, they have their vulnerabilities. But one of the really cool things is the writers always ensure that even though they have their weaknesses, vulnerabilities, and even things that limit them from being able to just be impermeable, they still come out looking really strong. And that's, in my opinion, how you write a superhero character. You don't necessarily want to go ahead and pretty much ignore the fact that fans have a connection to this character after a while. And I think this was the biggest mistake that Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League made. In fact, Gotham Knights, as much as I will tell you that this is probably one of my favorite games, yes, Gotham Knights is one of my favorite games. I like the Arkham games, but for some reason, the way Gotham Knights is, in my opinion anyways, presented from a combat perspective, open world gameplay loop perspective, I do like it. However, the one missing piece was that Batman, even though he had a sacrificial death, they made it happen twice, and they pretty much removed him from this legacy which he built. That, in my opinion, pretty much put this game in a really strange place. Many of you remember, if you remember, Terry McGinnis, this is pretty much the Batman Beyond character. He was acting under the shadow of the Batman Bruce Wayne. They brought an older Bruce Wayne and they made him where it was like, okay, he's pretty much mentoring this new Batman character who still does not necessarily know all of the ropes. However, in this Gotham Knights game, it seemed like even young Tim was almost already established, even though he was still, in my opinion anyways, he was still very young and not necessarily, fully ready to get out there on his own. However, yes, I can see an argument where you can say, well, the story forced them out of their nest in order for them to be able to, go out there and take on the evils of the world, or at least deal with Ra's al Ghul's legacy that had basically bothered them. But I think from a fan perspective, this was something that the developers really did miss out on. And if you actually evaluate things, the way a lot of superheroes are being treated these days, it seems to me that the writers are not, or I guess the people who are making the decisions are not too interested in making these superheroes look as strong as they actually are and have been presented to be in different comics and different contemporary works. It's just a fact. I mean, can we go to Spider-Man 2 and look at how they made a young 30-something-year-old Peter Parker look tired, worn out, and washed? This is a superhero with superpowers. A radioactive spider has bitten this character, changed his genetic makeup. So at the age of 35, Peter Parker should be vibing like a 21-year-old with the agility and even the regeneration of a 21-year-old or even much younger, because this is the kind of human being he is now. With these new powers that he's been given, he basically is going to be using them for good. But it seemed like Marvel Spider-Man 2 was not too interested in making us see that Peter Parker. But at the end of the day, I think this is a recurring theme that everyone, for the most part, have pretty much, now started being, aware of, because it continues to rear its head over and over again. And then at the end of the day, the Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League game, I think that really put the nail in the coffin, because killing your superheroes, or at least portraying them as evil or being vulnerable to fully being evil and not giving them any redemption arc, to me, I just think that really sealed the deal for how no one wanted to touch Suicide Squad. Many people don't necessarily remember, but if you take a very close look, it wasn't until that leak. I mean, people were already on the fence, but when that leak came out as to how Harley Quinn basically treated Batman, it was a wrap for a majority of people. And, you don't do that in a story, except maybe you have a trick under your sleeve. But we're going to season 2 of that Suicide Squad game, and it doesn't seem like the trick is there to basically make this redemption arc a reality. So I guess the reward is what they're reaping right now. Maybe they should have asked Sir Arthur Conan Doyle when he killed Sherlock Holmes. Maybe they should have asked him the kind of reaction that, all of the young men and even possibly the Queen of England at the time actually had towards that death. Yes, there were actually reports that it seemed as if potentially that the Queen of England was not so amused to the killing of Sherlock Holmes. Big freaking deal. One detective in the 1800s gets killed off, and its audiences basically boycott the magazine subscription. Another detective gets killed 100+ years later, and a huge boycott ensues. Human behavior has not changed. History repeated itself. In a sense. Thanks for watching the video. Appreciate you guys' time and audience. Hopefully we'll talk pretty soon in another one. Peace out.